Today, we're putting aside the trends and ladles for a bit. We're going deep into the microscopic world of how clothes are actually made. We're talking about that hidden language written in thread.
Yeah.
You know, the seams, the hems, the little structural details that silently tell you about quality, function, and ultimately, whether that piece is built to last 3 months or, well, maybe 30 years.
Exactly. Think of this as the ultimate decoder ring for when you're shopping. We all get distracted by, say, the feel of the fabric or a great color, right? But the real story, the one about durability, about cost, it's told by the stitch. Choosing a seam isn't just random, it's a fundamental engineering decision.
Right. And we want to get past thinking of a seam as just, where two pieces of fabric meet.
Yeah.
We're trying to translate those technical specs into things you can actually see and recognize. Our mission today is to understand the why. Why does a delicate blouse need one kind of seam, while, say, heavy-duty jeans need something completely different?
Well, because making clothes is maybe less art and more. Matrix math, almost. Before they even cut the fabric, manufacturers are weighing 5 key factors. These really lock in how something's going to be constructed.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's give everyone listening the full picture of that decision process. What are those 5 things that really determine the choice of a seam or a hem?
Okay, first, the type of product. Is it something needing structure, like a shoe or a bag? Or is
Right.
it, flowing fabric for a dress? Second, the place in the product. A shoulder seam takes totally different stress compared to a neckline or, say, a cuff. Third, the style. Is the goal high fashion, where maybe invisibility is key?
Yeah.
Or is it rugged workwear, where you want to see that strength?
The last 2 are really about the materials themselves and how they're being used, right?
Precisely. Number 4 is the types of fabric. You mentioned it. You just can't treat sheer lace like you treat vinyl or a heavy knit. Each needs a specific method to stop fraying or getting too bulky. And finally, number 5, the type of the cut. Is the edge straight? Or is it a tricky curve? Or maybe the hardest one? Cut on the bias.
That's really interesting. It makes you realize it's not arbitrary at all. It's like a system responding to stress, materials, and what you want the final thing to do. So let's start with the foundation, seam constructions, the structural backbone. How do we tell the difference between seams built for elegance versus ones designed to survive, well, anything?
It really comes down to how much protection they give the raw edge of the fabric and how much tension they can handle and distribute.
Okay, let's start at the top, the apex of refinement, the French seam. When I hear that, I immediately think delicate fabrics, invisibility.
You're spot on. The French seam is absolutely a hallmark of quality in delicate clothing. Think of it like a seam within a seam. The raw edges are totally enclosed inside the stitch line. You can't feel them, they can't fray, and because they're so contained, it's perfect for woven fabrics, especially the really delicate ones like sheers and fine lace. You'll usually find it tucked away on the side seams, maybe the sleeve seams, of those expensive, beautifully made blouses and shirts. It takes time, so seeing it is kind of a quality guarantee.
Okay, so it's all about making those raw edges just disappear. Pure refinement. But then there's the bound seam. That also sounds high quality, but maybe it solves a slightly different problem.
It does, yeah. The bound seam is also definitely high-end. It wraps the raw edge in fabric, basically, making it look good and adding durability. What's really interesting is how it's used for unlined garments, like an expensive wool jacket or a really nice coat. Since you can see the inside, that bound seam gives it the polish it needs.
Exactly. And that makes it absolutely essential for reversible garments. The inside has to look as finished as the outside. If you ever find a truly reversible jacket, check those seams. Chances are they'll be bound. You also see it sometimes as the clean finish on the neckline seam of higher-end t-shirts and polos.
Okay, so we've moved from elegant containment to, well, pure strength. If the French seam is like silk thread, the welt seam sounds more like a steel cable.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. The welt seam is built for stress and tension. That's why it's practically synonymous with denim. Every time you see that classic heavy-duty double stitch on your jeans or a denim shirt or a jacket, you're looking at a welt seam.
What is it specifically that makes it so strong? It spreads the tension out over a wider area of the fabric, which stops it from blowing out. You mentioned a key example earlier, the crotch and side seams on trousers. Those are areas of intense, dynamic stress bending, sitting, moving. If a cheaper seam is used there, well, you're kind of hoping for the best when you bend down. The welt seam helps prevent that kind of catastrophic failure. It's all about ruggedness.
That makes the difference between the welt seam and the felled seam a bit clearer. They both look durable, but the felled seam sounds maybe more General purpose.
The felled seam is incredibly versatile, yeah. It's often used where you need a strong, flat finish, but maybe without that massive dynamic stress. Often things like bags, shoes, even home decor items. Internal durability is key there, but the stress isn't usually constant, aggressive movement. You'll also find it a lot on side seams and shoulder seams of lined garments, where you want things to lie flat underneath the lining.
Okay, let's pivot to the real specialist seams designed for tricky materials. What about the lapped seam?
Right, the lap seam is kind of reserved for materials that don't, like traditional stitching or gathering fabrics that don't flare much. Think leather, suede, vinyl, even some types of lace. Because it handles that rigidity well, it's good for dealing with irregular shapes, curved seams and accessories, or anywhere you need a low-profile join without adding bulk.
And the open seam. It sounds almost too simple for high-quality stuff.
Well, the open seam is actually a powerhouse for medium and heavyweight woven fabrics. You find the open seam mainly in lined jackets and coats and heavier accessories like bags. Since the lining hides the raw edges anyway, the maker can just focus on the raw tensile strength of that open seam underneath.
And finally, the sandwich seam. The name kind of suggests layering, maybe for reinforcement.
Absolutely. The sandwich seam is all about structural reinforcement, where multiple pieces come together or where there are heavy stress points. You see it a lot in the yoke and shoulder seams of shirts and blouses, and also on the yokes of skirts and trousers. It's often used when you're integrating complex bits, like collars or cuffs, to make sure everything stays stable.
Okay, that covers the structural backbone pretty well. We've seen how the internal seams really dictate durability and elegance, but the edge, the hem, that's what defines how a garment hangs, how it interacts with the gravity. Let's move naturally onto hems and edge finishes, the defining details at the periphery.
Yeah, this part really shows how designers manage flow, drape, and deal with challenges like curves or reversibility.
We all know the basic fold hem. It's the standard finish you see everywhere. But tell me about the high-quality alternative, the bound hem.
Right, the fold hem is the utility player, fine for most straight hems on woven fabrics. The bound hem, though, signals higher quality because it handles complex shapes so gracefully. It's ideal for curved hems, necklines, and importantly, like the bound seam, it gives that neat, contained finish on both sides.
And there it is again, the sandwich hem. Also seems to solve that reversibility problem, but maybe in a different spot.
Correct. The sandwich hem is really dedicated to lined garments, particularly on structured parts. Think collars, lapel edges, hoods. The idea is to ensure structural integrity and a clean look for reversible items, giving a polished edge where two panels meet and turn over.
Okay, let's talk about what sounds like a tailor's nightmare. Dealing with fabric cut on the bias. For anyone listening, can you just briefly explain what that means and why it's so tricky to finish?
Sure. Cutting on the bias means you cut diagonally across the fabric weave instead of straight along the threads. This allows the fabric to stretch and flow and drape beautifully. Think of those gorgeous flowing evening gowns from the 1930s. The problem is, bias cut edges distort really easily. They stretch out of shape, they can unravel, they're just unstable.
So if you have a stunning flowing skirt cut on the bias, you need a specific finish to stop it from becoming a mess. Is that where the face hem comes in?
Precisely. The faced hem is crucial for managing those non-straight bias cut edges. The facing, it's usually a separate piece of fabric cut to match the curve, lets the main fabric conform to the edge without stretching or buckling. You see this finish a lot on armholes and necklines of sleeveless tops and dresses, and basically any hem that needs to keep a complex curve while still having that fluid drape.
That's a great insight. It explains why some things hang so beautifully. It's the engineering in the hem. Similarly, we have the binded edge.
The binded edge is another really good choice for curved and bias cut edges. It's very common on necklines, cuffs, armholes on sleeveless tops. It neatly wraps and contains the edge, giving a clean, professional finish. You also see it quite a bit in things like bags or home decor, where you want a strong, clean rim.
Now let's jump to finishes that are meant to be seen, or maybe even unfinished. The exposed band seems like an obvious utility choice.
It is, yeah. The exposed band is all about deliberate contrast and clear function. This is the finish you see in your everyday stuff. The ribbed necklines on t-shirts, the finished armhole edges on tank tops, those gathered hems that hide an elastic band inside. It's an external functional thing, often used for comfort and movement.
And then there's the unhemmed edge. Now, this sounds like pure cost saving, but you're saying there are specific uses where it's actually needed for style or drape.
You're right. I mean, yes, it is used in fast fashion sometimes just to save time, but it also has specific sometimes high design applications. It's used quite deliberately for the bottom of really full skirts made from very light fabrics. If you put a heavy hem on a light floaty skirt, it just kills the drape. The unhemmed edge keeps that intended flow. We also see it used in the fur industry and often in bags and accessories where maybe a raw, industrial, or utility look is the goal.
It's fascinating how not having a stitch can be just as deliberate as having a complex one. Okay, finally, let's just briefly touch on structural details, things that add shape or utility beyond the main seam lines.
Yeah, we should definitely mention pleats and patches. The simple pleat is a basic tool for shaping. Used a lot in women's clothing to handle fabric volume, think waist, hip, bust area. You also see it on shirt cuff seams sometimes, and in accessories like structured hats or bags to add shape.
But the box pleat, that has a very specific, very recognizable function that anyone who wears a button-down shirt will know instantly.
Absolutely. The box pleat is famously found right on the back of shirts, just below the yoke. Its purpose is crucial. It gives you ease of movement across the shoulders and back. Without that little pleat, the shirt would feel really restrictive when you move. It also adds a bit of tailored shaping and volume to things like patch pockets, skirts, trousers, and even bags.
And speaking of patch pockets, that brings us to the simple utility of the patch detail.
Yeah, the patch is pure function, mostly. It's used for patch pockets on almost anything, jeans, shirts, trousers. But it's also used for reinforcement, like the classic elbow patch, or as an applique where you attach a decorative or maybe a utility piece onto the main garment. Seeing a patch often signals utility and usually a more casual style.
So what we've really done today is kind of translate this collection of technical terms into a functional language you can actually use. If we pull all this together, what's the key takeaway for everyone listening?
Well, the fundamental thing to remember is that the choice between, say, a French seam and a welt seam isn't random. It's the difference between aiming for delicate elegance versus rugged, stress-tested durability. That selection process is really a systematic matrix based on those 5 factors we talked about: the fabric, the product type, where it is on the product, the style, and the cut. Manufacturers are basically solving engineering problems with thread.
And knowing this is a fantastic shortcut for you, the listener, to spot those hidden quality markers. You don't have to guess what a garment is meant for or how long it might last. You just need to learn how to read its internal map, so to speak.
Exactly. And that leads right into a final thought, maybe something provocative. The next time you're shopping, maybe looking at something high quality, especially like a line jacket, a detailed blouse, maybe something reversible. Don't just look at the outside. Look inside. Look at the seams. That's where the real quality story often is.